food is being offered to them, let us just say a few words in relationship to deity worship at home and in relation to Srila Prabhupada, because I assume you're all aware that 50 years ago, yesterday, Srila Prabhupada arrived in Johannesburg. Try and keep the sound effects down. we have no sound system, I'm afraid. Yes, right, Prabhupada came from Durban. He arrived in Durban on the 5th of October 1975. 1975, yeah. And he came up to Joburg on the 14th of October 1975, so yesterday was 50 years ago. And I don't know really if he did anything special on the 15th, but just his presence is just extremely special. So let me... Well, first, you know what I'll do? I collect Prabhupada's stories, and I have a number of Prabhupada's stories regarding deities and Prabhupada's sort of perspective on deities and like that. First of all, though, let us just, if you can just repeat after me. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So what shall I do first? Let me just tell you a few Prabhupada stories connected with deities. First of all, then we'll read a verse from the Bhagavatam and make a little bit of the purport regarding deity worship. So here's an interesting one which some of you, however many, may have heard before, but, you know, Prabhupada would say, repetition of a good thing is good. So, Prabhupada was somewhere in America, and one day one devotee arrived from Los Angeles, which was at the time the headquarters of ＩSKCON in the world. And even to this day, it's a very big temple. So this devotee arrived and told Prabhupada's assistants that he had been sent by the GBC from Los Angeles to show Prabhupada some photos of a program which had taken place on the Sunday, just a matter of a day or two before, in the temple room during the Sunday program in Los Angeles. And he explained that a troupe of very high-level classical Indian dancers had come to the temple, and they had offered to do a show on Sunday just for free in front of, there's probably a few hundred people or something like that would come in those days to the Sunday programs. So he wanted to, so the GBC, whose name was Jayatirtha, in Los Angeles, they had made some photos and they wanted to show Prabhupada. So Prabhupada said, all right. And the devotee started showing photos, kind of, larger format type photos, very colorful. And the dancers are dancing in front of the deities with their backs to the deities. And the devotees sort of, quite excited that, oh yes, the people really enjoyed it and it was just really nice and so on. And Prabhupada said, but the dancers had their backs to the deities. And the devotee didn't really catch that Prabhupada was concerned, quite concerned about that. So he just said, yes, well, Prabhupada, we discussed it and we thought that was the best position so the people could see the easiest possible. And Prabhupada said, but why have the dancers got their backs to the deities? And the devotee understood, whoops, we have a problem here. And the devotee said, well, we discussed it, the temple president, and with Jayatirtha, who's the GBC. And Jayatirtha felt that it was all right for the dancers to have their backs to the deities. And Srila Prabhupada said, oh, I see. Srila Rupa Goswami says, you must never turn your back to the deities. But Jayatirtha says it is all right. And Prabhupada said, just see, Jayatirtha has become big authority now, bigger than Rupa Goswami. And Prabhupada then said, this is the problem in ISKCON. Too many big authorities. So yes, Prabhupada was very concerned about the deities. Another little story, just a very short one. Prabhupada was traveling around America and he went from one temple to another by car, but in between they stopped at another temple, sort of en route, just for a couple of hours, 2 or 3 hours like that, before going on to the actual destination. So the devotees got their bags and they set Prabhupada up. But the devotee, on Prabhupada's party, there was one devotee who was the pujari, because Prabhupada, at that point at least, he traveled with Radha Krishna deities, small Radha Krishna deities. To my knowledge, they're on the altar in our temple in New York, as far as I'm aware. But anyway, he was traveling with these little Radha Govinda deities. And the pujari devotee decided that, well, we're only here for a couple of hours, so, I'll just leave the deities in their, carrying case. They were taken and Srila Prabhupada asked him, where are the deities? And the devotee said, well, Srila Prabhupada, we're just here for a few hours, and I thought, it was not really necessary to take them out. And Srila Prabhupada got sort of disturbed. Prabhupada said that you are unpacked, you are very nice and comfortable. What about the deities? So then the devotee brought out the deities. Yes. Just a sec. Let's have a look here. Let's have a look. Yes, okay. Well, how many of you, let me just ask, how many of you were in the Midran temple last night? Please put your hands up. I was there. Not so many. Then I can tell you the story. I mean, repetition of a good thing is good, but still. So, Mother Lakshmi Moni had just become the pujari for the Radha Krishna deities in our temple in Dallas, Texas, in America. Those deities called Radha Kalachandji. And she's looking around, she just like that day became the pujari for those deities. So she's looking through all the paraphernalia and things that are there for those deities, and she found in a small box some conch shell eyes, if you know what I mean. If you've seen photos of Radha Raman, the famous deities in Vrindavan, I think they always have, at least as far as I'm aware, they always have conch shell eyes, means they're cut out of conch shells, actually, with a black thing circle in the center. And then they're stuck on the faces of the deities. So anyway, she asked, Mother Lakshmi Mani asked, what are these eyes, conch shell eyes, doing here? And someone told them, well, Srila Prabhupada, a little while ago, he said that when we installed the deities, he said it might be nice if they had conch shell eyes. So, maybe. And Mother Lakshmi Moni took it that Prabhupada wanted Radha, or Kalachandji at least himself, to have conch shell eyes. So she went to see Srila Prabhupada and said, Srila Prabhupada, I heard you wanted that that Kalachandji would have conch shell eyes, and I found these conch shell eyes. So, shall we put them on? And Srila Prabhupada said, no, I think he looks fine the way he is. And anyway, the next day it was on Mother Lakshmi Moni's mind that, Prabhupada said he wanted Krishna to have conch shell eyes. So she approached him again. So Srila Prabhupada, regarding the conch shell eyes, I have them here. Shall I put them on? Shall we put them on? And Srila Prabhupada again said, Kalachandji's eyes are fine, just the way they are. But she didn't really catch it, Mother Lakshmi. And she said, well, I can put them on. It's not a problem. I can put them, shall I put them on? And Prabhupada said, no. And she said, but Prabhupada, we can put them on. We can put them on. And, well, the context, I forgot. The context was, it was a Prabhupada evening in the Los Angeles temple in America. And there were many, many people there, good few hundred, including quite a number, probably 50 or so, Prabhupada disciples. And the devotees were telling stories that the Prabhupada disciples, their experiences with Prabhupada. And then it was decided, we will have a competition. Who got chastised the most heavily by Prabhupada? So different devotees said, well, okay, I got chastised heavily, and told the story. Everyone said, yeah, that was pretty heavy. And someone else said, well, I got chastised more heavily, and told that story. And finally, Lakshmi Moni said, I think I got chastised the most heavily. So she told the story. And Prabhupada, she's now 2 times that one particular time, she has said, but it's okay, we can put them on, Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, no, he looks fine, just the way he is. Then third time, Prabhupada, it would not be a problem. We can put them on. And Srila Prabhupada, very strongly, Prabhupada said, but I am Prabhupada, and I am telling you, he looks fine the way he is. And everyone agreed. She won the competition. She got chastised almost heavily. Right, okay, let's see. Yeah, here's an interesting one. There was one couple, Vishal and Vishalini, disciples of Prabhupada, and they were in India, they were living in India, and they had a van, and they were driving around India distributing Prabhupada's books. And they had been doing it for some months. And, in those days, this is in Prabhupada's time, so sort of early to mid-70s or so. And there were not many ISKCON temples in India at the time. Now, they're just everywhere, but then there's maybe half a dozen or something like that. Really not many at all. So they wrote to Prabhupada and said, we're driving around trying to distribute your books, but we hardly ever get the opportunity to have darshan of deities. So would you please allow us, Srila Prabhupada, to get some Gaunitai deities, and we can travel with them, and this will be very nice, encouraging for us. And, we'll make a little altar somehow in our vehicle. And Prabhupada wrote back and said, you do not need deities. You have the books. Just put the books on an altar and offer arati, offer worship, offer food to the books, because they're not different from Krishna. You can just worship the books, Prabhupada said. Yes, okay. One time Prabhupada was in Bhaktivedanta Manor, and he told the audience, the difference between you and me is that you can fall down any time, but I will never fall down. But I cannot fall down. So after the class, Prabhupada went in front of the deities, hands like this, and he was sort of murmuring something. He was saying something very quietly. No one could hear what he was saying. So then Prabhupada went upstairs, and Prabhupada's one disciple approached Prabhupada up in his quarters upstairs and said, Srila Prabhupada, I was watching you there after the class. It seemed you were praying to the deities. And Prabhupada said, yes. And the devotee asked, what were you praying? And Srila Prabhupada answered, I was praying that I may never fall down. And the devotee said, but Prabhupada, you just told us in the class that you cannot fall down. We can fall down any time, but you cannot fall down. And Srila Prabhupada answered, yes, because I'm always praying to Krishna that I don't fall down. Okay, let's see now what. Okay. Oh yeah, this is the last little one. I mean, there's a few others, but this is a nice little one. One devotee asked Prabhupada that we understand that the deities are Krishna. Radha and Krishna, or Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, they are personally there And these are eternal forms, no less than how they are in Goloka Vrindavan. And Prabhupada agreed, yes, that's a fact. And then the devotee said, well, Prabhupada, seeing Krishna is transcendental and ever fresh. Why did the garlands we put on the deities deteriorate and have to be changed? Why that? Because surely you know they're eternal like Krishna. And Prabhupada answered, just to give you the chance to serve by making new garments. So Prabhupada really took deities very seriously indeed. And now, well, shortly, I'll just read a little bit from Srimad Bhagavatam for just maybe 5 minutes. And then we will ask Madana-mohan Prabhu to address us. Let's see here. Right. Yes, okay. So I will read Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 3, Pure Devotional Service, the Change in Heart. And I will read verse 22. And I'll read just part of the purport. Barhayate te nayane narana, lingani vishnu nanarikshito ye, padonunam to druma janma bhajo, shetrani nanu vrajato harer yo. The eyes which do not look at the deities, the symbolic representations of the personality of Godhead, Vishnu, his forms, name, quality, etc., are like those printed on the plumes of the peacock, and the legs which do not move to the holy places where the Lord is remembered are considered to be like tree trunks. So Srila Prabhupada gives a purport here, a lot of which, the first half of which at least, is about deity worship and deity worship at home for householders. So I'll just read a little bit of the purport, especially for the household devotees. The path of deity worship is strongly recommended. As far as possible, every householder, by the direction of the spiritual master, must install the deity of Vishnu. Forms like Radha Krishna, Lakshmi Narayan, or Sitaram especially, or any other form of the Lord, like Nrsimha, Varaha, Gaunitai, Matsya, Kurma, Shalagram, Shila, and many other forms of Vishnu, like Trivikram, Keshava, Achyuta, Vasudeva, Narayan, and Damodar, as recommended in the Vaishnav Tantras or Puranas, and one's family should worship strictly following directions and regulations of Archana Vidhi. And listen to this, devotees. Any member of the family who is above 12 years of age should be initiated by a bona fide spiritual master, and all the members of the household should be engaged in the daily service of the Lord. I think most of you are more than 12. You're more than 12. So you, more than 12. Not yet. Still working on it. Anyway, you get the idea. So it's very important. And it's very important that really it's very nice. It's just really nice to sanctify your house. Because let's face it, when you've got a house just, somewhere in the suburbs, amongst many other sort of just houses, it may not be so transcendental. I mean, sort of in and of itself, the situation. Whereas in a temple, it really is, you can feel the difference. Like last time I was in Midrand area, I stayed in the house of one devotee family, and they're really nice. And, they got a nice house with pictures and so on and so forth. But now we're staying in the Midrand temple, and you can just feel the difference. It really is different. Yes, there's a more transcendental atmosphere. So therefore, as Prabhupada's saying here, especially for the householder devotees, the path of deity worship is strongly recommended. Yeah. Make your house into a temple. So, anyway, I'll just leave that with you. And I will now call upon His Grace Madana-mohan Prabhu to enlighten us further on the subject of deities, deity worship, and particularly deity worship at home. You all know who is Madana-mohan Prabhu. Anyway, let me just, whether you know or not, let me just say a couple of words. Is that he is from Russia, and he speaks excellent Russian. If any of you know some Russian, you can converse with him. But he also speaks excellent English. Very long. Yeah. He speaks excellent English. And why is he here in South Africa? Did he just decide to drop in and just, see what's going on? No. He has come on a special mission because he, in a little while, he is going to be taking sannyas. Yes. So, he's been a devotee, 30-something years or so.
Trying to.
Approximately.
Trying to, yes.
Yeah. And so now as part of that process for, sort of gearing up, you could say, and being sort of monitored to some degree to see how he's doing. So he's come here, and would you believe, devotees, to be monitored by me? I'm sorry, but it's true. So I had to sort of keep an eye and particularly listen to him give classes. And I must say, those of you who were there or maybe went online last night and the night before, it was just so nice. It really was just so nice. Sure. So anyway, here he is. So please enlighten us. Yes. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
You have to speak up because there's no sound system.
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishtaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Caitanya Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurvani Pracharini Vishesha Shrimati Prashtinti Vishatarine Jai Shri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Thank you so much, Bhakti Caitanya Maharaj, and thank to all the assembled devotees here to Sadhu Prabhu for giving me an opportunity to be present at this ceremony. Speaking of being monitored by Bhakti Caitanya Maharaj, as he was saying these words, I remembered the verse from, I think it's from Srila Sanatana Goswami's Brihad Bhagavatamrita, when he says that Lord Chaitanya, he has a very special glance that he casts upon conditioned souls. Smita loka shokam harati jagatam yasya parito. He has sidelong glances cast on the whole universe and makes the whole universe filled with joy. Smita lokam, and those glances of Lord Chaitanya, because his eyes extend to his ears, so he could see better, have a better view of everyone around us, and so he could use his sidelong glances to keep an eye on those who might not deserve to be looked upon, but he still does keep an eye on them sideways. And when he does cast his glance upon conditioned souls, they become liberated immediately. Smita loka shokam harati jagatam. The verse says that just by his sidelong glances, he destroys the misery of this world and everywhere. Yasya parito. And the same could be said about devotees, pure devotees of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Prabodhananda Saraswati Thakur in Chaitanya Chandramrita says that one can worship Lord Vishnu, one can read the Vedas, go to different holy places, one can follow the austerities and principles of Vedic lives, perform austerities and sacrifices, anything, you name it. But if one doesn't get the mercy of Lord Chaitanya's dear devotees, then everything is useless without their mercy. So I'm feeling very fortunate to be looked upon once in a while by the merciful sidelong glances of Bhakti Caitanya Maharaj. And that makes me want to rise up to his expectations, just like Srila Prabhupada himself kept an eye on his disciples, and this way he made them grow spiritually. It's so important. I don't know about you, but maybe you could apply it to yourself and see if it's important for you as well. But so important to have someone invested in your spiritual life, to see and feel your spiritual life, your spiritual success as his or her own. Just like parents, when they live by the best interests of their children, and that's why the children can grow. In the same way, we are fortunate to have Prabhupada's disciples and other senior devotees who, on Srila Prabhupada's behalf, make us feel important. Not important in that kind of way that fosters our pride and the sense of self-importance, but important because they believe in us and they are ready to do anything to make us grow spiritually. Just like Srila Prabhupada himself, he was available to his disciples despite his busy schedule. There's one very endearing pastime of Srila Prabhupada. It's long, but I won't tell you. I'll just allude to it. In My Glorious Master, a book written by Burijan Prabhu, he explains how he and Mataji Jagatarini, his wife, they were married by Srila Prabhupada. He was from a Jewish background from New York, and she was a cinema star from Australia. A very unlikely match. They call it, say, marriage made in heaven or something like that. It was arranged by Srila Prabhupada, actually. It was higher than in heaven. So he matched them, he married them, and he sent them to preach in Hong Kong. And long story short, they started gradually, how they say that, drifting away from the rigors of devotional practice. He grew long hair, they stopped offering food, they started wearing regular clothes instead of sari and dhoti, they stopped. There are some things that they started adjusting in their lives, thinking that's only practical for us to preach. And there was some Indian community there built around them. And then Prabhupada all of a sudden wrote them, he sent a wire, a telegram, saying that I'm coming in 1 week or something like that. And all of a sudden they were thrown into a flurry of activities, fixing things up and straightening up their own spiritual lives and preparing a room for Prabhupada to stay, making arrangements. Then he came and he explains in his book how Prabhupada came down heavy on them from the very beginning of his visit. They were riding in a car, a limousine they had rented for him, and Prabhupada all of a sudden, just like a monsoon cloud that all of a sudden just erupts in downpour, in torrential rains, and he started chastising them right there in the car. Whose disciples are you? Like that. Yours, Prabhupada? No, my disciples don't wear long hair. Whose disciples are you? Like that. Anyway, he continued for as long as he stayed there, for a week or so, and then he left them behind, chastened up and kind of straightened in their spiritual practices. But then later on he found out, I think it was after Prabhupada left, that he was somewhere else in the world and he had the whole plan mapped up for him, traveling to different places. But then he received the letter, and that letter, his servant was massaging him, and all of a sudden he saw Prabhupada cry, reading the letter. And then he asked Prabhupada what the reason was for his tears, and he said, well, my son and daughter, they're falling into Maya in Hong Kong, so I have to go and rescue them. So he changed his entire schedule and went just for them too, to save them. And as Prabhupada explains, what Chaitanya Maharaj had just read, the commentary on the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, to maintain what the spiritual master gives us at the point of initiation. Initiation doesn't start at the point when we receive our spiritual names and we throw a banana into the fire and take our vows. Initiation starts way before that, when we develop faith in the importance of following the instructions of the spiritual master. Srila Prabhupada explains this is the actual initiation, and then it becomes kind of formalized, officially concluded, well, not concluded, but officially fixed at the point of formal initiation. So Srila Prabhupada explains in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam that at the point of initiation, the spiritual master doesn't just give us a new name and make us socially uplifted in the society of devotees, because now we're initiated and we have a spiritual name. Not that he just takes upon himself our karma, but Prabhupada explains, it's a heart-to-heart affair. He transplants Krishna from his heart into the heart of his disciple. And Prabhupada explains there, he says, without being initiated by such a spiritual master who carries Krishna in his heart, then we cannot have that ability to carry Krishna in our heart. That's the importance of initiation, heart-to-heart affair. And the same thing happens when the spiritual master gives us the deity of Krishna. Just as he invests in our spiritual life, just as he not transfers, because Krishna stays in his heart, but he extends Krishna's presence from his heart into ours. And the same way he extends Krishna's presence from his heart into the form of the deities and entrusts the deities to us. It's a sign of trust. It's a gesture of trust on the behalf of the spiritual master when he gives us the holy name or the mantras and also the deity. These three form the three gradual steps of initiation. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains, first is, it's called tapa, means repentance, which makes us come to the shelter of the spiritual master, repenting the previous life that we led before meeting him or meeting the devotees. We don't want to look back. So that's tapa, the pangs of repentance. Then Urdhva Pundra, he explains that the spiritual master teaches, in a traditional setting, teaches how to apply tilak on the forehead and other parts of the body, but the deeper meaning of that is that he makes us aspire for the higher destination. He gives us the highest purpose in life, which we should build our lives around. And then he helps us to do that by giving us Nama, means Krishna's holy name, and our own name now becomes Krishna's name with the Dasa suffix to it. So we become connected with Krishna as his servants. And then he gives us a mantra to those of you who have received the second initiation from your spiritual masters. It's a form of Krishna in sound, the same as deities, but in sound form. Shabda Brahma Param Brava Namo Bishashvatitanu, Krishna says in the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. These are my two forms, deities and mantra. And then finally the spiritual master gives us the deity of Krishna, trusting us to be spiritual adults who can take care of Krishna just like we take care of children. Like Bhakti Caitanya Maharaj has just spoken so nicely about in a very inspiring, educating way about Prabhupada's pastimes, how he chastised his disciples for being negligent about deity worship, like that devotee who didn't care to unpack Shishirada Govinda from the box. It's if we understand who the spiritual master gave us, they're more alive than us. Radha Krishna or Shishi Gaur Nitai, they're the source of life in our bodies, and also they're the source of life and light in our spiritual lives. And that they should be treated, they have come to us taking a position of dependence. Even though Krishna is independent and he maintains everyone else, the Lord Chaitanya is called Vishvambara, which means he supports, who maintains the entire universe, Vishvambara. But Prabhupada explains, he assumes that kind of dependent mood, which means if the devotee doesn't feed me, I'll starve. If the devotee doesn't wake me up, I'll sleep. If the devotee doesn't put me to rest, I will remain sleepless overnight. There was a story about Prabhupada. Maybe Maharaj, you might recall where it happened. I heard it from Bhakti Caitanya Maharaj. There was a temple in New York, in America. I don't know if it was New York, somewhere in America. And there were deities of Krishna and Radharani installed. And the devotees' routine was that they would go out on Harinams very late into the night, and they would come to the temple, they would have Mangalarti, and they would rest. Because they figured that it was much more effective in their preaching to be out there when people were busy spending their nights in that city. I don't remember where the city was. So they shifted Mangalarati schedules to accommodate the devotees' schedule. So Krishna would have Mangalarati at 4 o'clock instead of 4:30. And they thought it was a very nice arrangement. Like Maharaj said, there are too many big authorities. Right? So they thought, okay, it was a nice arrangement. Krishna doesn't mind taking less sleep overnight. So Prabhupada came to that place and nobody had told him anything about the new routine. But upon arrival, he called the temple president and he told him, Krishna looks tired, underslept. What happens? What happened? Krishna looks underslept. You know how we look when we are underslept, right? You look in the mirror and you see black circles around the eyes, sagging face and everything. I don't know what Prabhupada saw. To devotees, Krishna looked the same, but Prabhupada said, Krishna looks underslept. What happened? And explained what happened, and Krishna Prabhupada immediately restored the routine of Krishna back to where it was. So the spiritual master entrusts us deities and makes Krishna the center of our lives. Now, as he himself, Krishna explains in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, he says that if someone offers to me in my deity form whatever is most precious in his or her life, that offering qualifies that person for eternal life in the spiritual world. And as Maharaj explained, quoting Prabhupada's purport from the 2nd canto of Bhagavatam, it is especially relevant for grihasthas. Again, I don't know about you. Prabhupada says that because grihasthas, his words, not mine, they tend to get carried away by the multiple responsibilities they have. Raising children, going to work, maintaining the household, maintaining relationships with their relatives on both sides, so many other responsibilities. So the tendency is to forget about Krishna somehow. So Prabhupada explains that worshipping Krishna in the deity form is a chance for us to put him back to where he belongs, as the center of our lives. And the way to do that is to offer Krishna everything we have, not just food, but also clothing and jewelry and the house that we live in and our efforts. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, whatever you eat, whatever you do, whatever austerities you perform, whatever you accept or give away, do it as an offering to me. And it should be built in such a way that it's impossible to forget to offer to Krishna what we have and what we depend upon. Just like we need to eat, we cannot forget about eating. If we skip our meal, then we remember it immediately and we cannot forget it. At least I cannot. Right? So Pancharatrika Vidhi connects things which we cannot live without, like eating and sleeping, with persons that we unfortunately can live without, like Krishna. We think we can live without. So it makes the rules of Pancharatrika that need to be followed. They're built in such a way that every step, every aspect of our life is connected with Krishna, so we cannot forget Him, just as we cannot forget these aspects of our life. And then it's a chance, as Prabhupada once writes to his family couple, his married couple of his disciples, Sharadiya Mataji and Vaikuntanath Prabhu. Sharadiya, yes, very young. And they were sent to Guyana to preach, of all places. It's in the middle of nowhere, Latin America or somewhere, was it? And then he wrote to them a letter, and he said, if you follow your family life properly and use it for preaching, in this very lifetime you'll go back to Goloka Vrindavana. All you need to do is to maintain the standards of purity, read all my books, chant the Hare Krishna mantra every day without fail, follow the Four Agility principles, and we can extend Prabhupada's instructions by adding worshiping the deity nicely. And then in this way you can be assured of going back to the spiritual world in this lifetime. And just the last thing, as Maharaj also explained in his presentation, actually not just what he explained, but the way Bhakti Caitanya Maharaj built his very inspiring and very educating presentation is that we have to hear about Krishna's glories in the form of a deity from the mouth of a pure devotee. He reminds us of who Krishna is. And on 2 occasions when Prabhupada had major installations of deities in our temples, Mayapur and Vrindavan. Actually, it was, I think, the year after the installation in Vrindavan. In Vrindavan, he installed Krishna Balaram in 1975, if memory serves. Yeah. Because this year was the 50th anniversary. And Mayapur was a couple of years before that. So on both occasions, I won't read, even though I'm tempted to read excerpts from his classes, but I'll just... He basically said the same things, 2 years apart. Reminding devotees that now you seem to be happy worshipping the deities, you seem to be eager to serve them, dress them nicely, but if you don't hear about Krishna, if you don't hear from Srimad Bhagavatam or Chaitanya Charitamrita, if you don't chant your rounds nicely, if you don't attend the morning program, in other words, you don't maintain that life that the spiritual master during Prana Pratishtha, he invested Krishna's presence into these figures, but now you have to maintain for you the presence in these deities by hearing about Krishna. That's what makes your bhakti, your ability to see Krishna in these forms, maintained, kept. And he says, the deities are called Vigraha, Archa Vigraha. But if you don't hear and chant about Krishna, very soon you'll think, our spiritual master is a rascal. He gave us this Krishna and Balaram, and now they're like Galagraha. Galagraha means a stone on the neck. Was the stone they used for grinding stone, used for grinding wheat. Those huge, very heavy, circular stones with a hole in the center. So our Guru Maharaj is such a rascal. Prabhupada says, he gave us these Krishna and Balaram, and now we have to take care of them. And you'll start cutting corners. Oh, this is broken, this is wilted, this is deteriorated, this is that. It's okay. Let us eat and sleep. That's what Prabhupada says. So on both occasions, he reminded them that the actual prana in our worship of the deities and the inspiration for Krishna to remain in our households is through hearing and chanting about him. And then he will continue to manifest in these wonderful forms. and will see His presence. And for others who come to temples, the way to see Krishna in these forms is to bring something to them. One should never come, Prabhupada explains, empty-handed. Be it in the temple, like we have temple Midrand or some other. I heard from Maharaj 6 temples in Johannesburg, 6 or something. And one should never come empty-handed to the temple. One should feel as if it's a privilege for him or her to bring something to Krishna, be it a little money or some flowers or some rice or some bhoga or something. And I'll conclude with my personal story. I joined in 1991 as a chemical student. So I like the philosophy, but then I came to the temple and the devotees told me about those small figurines, гаудия-вайшнавизм, it was in St. Petersburg, on the altar. And they told me they were God. And I had a hard time accepting that somehow. Not only that, but I didn't even see them clearly. Somehow they were covered in this kind of shiny effulgence for me. I couldn't even see clearly the features, but I was quite disappointed to be told that this is God, this is Krishna or гаудия-вайшнавизм. And I had trust in devotees or senior devotees who were invested in my spiritual life. And I confided in them and told them, somehow I have a hard time seeing these figures, these statues as Krishna. What do I do? And instead of preaching to me about me being a demon or something like that, because it does say that if you don't see Krishna in archer form, you're a demon, you have demonic, hellish mentality. But the devotee, senior devotee, Sutapa Prabhu, he was, Maharaj knows him very well, Sutapa Prabhu of St. Petersburg, very saintly devotee. He told me, you just bring something to Krishna every time you come to the temple. And as a student, I couldn't afford much. I was living on my stipend. I could hardly meet my ends on that stipend. Oh, my parents helped me, but somehow I would go to flower vendors in those booths. In Russia we have many booths with flowers, usually at railway stations. And I would ask them for broken flowers without stems, because they're useless for them. Carnations usually. And I would just beg for carnations, and they would give me a handful of broken, those heads, carnation heads without the stems, useless, they can't sell them. So I would beg for them and they would give me a handful of carnations. I would bring those to the temple. And somehow everything changed. I tried not to convince myself this is working, but somehow it just clicked, and all of a sudden I could see, oh, how couldn't I see it before? Krishna is God in this deity form. So it's through service, Bhakti Caitanya Krishna says that we see the deities as Krishna, as God, and we feel inspired to surrender our lives to them and build our lives, our life activities around them. And to maintain that vision, we have to hear and chant in association of devotees, which we are very fortunate to have here today, beginning with His Holiness Bhakti Caitanya Maharaj. Thank you very much, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada King.
Jai.
His Grace Madana-mohan Prabhu King.
Jai.